All right. Well, everyone, we're back. We're back for another episode of the season 3 in 2022, and we're still alive. All is well. And I have to tell you, this is like perfect timing, our conversation today, because we are going to talk to this incredible, inspirational guy who was in the Olympics, won some medals. We're going to talk about that, but who's also in a survivor of childhood cancer. And today, Ann, this morning, my daughter, she does gymnastics, and she was in the St.Jude meet. So this is, and all the proceeds raised money for the St.Jude's Children's Research Hospitals.
Wow.
To fight pediatric cancer. And what they were saying is that I think in this country, it's gone from like 20% survival rate of childhood cancers, most of them, all the way up to 80%. And so it was pretty incredible, because I heard all these great stories of St. Jude, and this is, maybe I'm going to give a little bit of a plug to St. Jude, but I feel like this is really timely. And Kevin McDowell, who is on our podcast, Kevin, I have to tell you that I had tears like streaming down my face as some of the people were sharing their stories of, 20 years ago when they went to a hospital, St. Jude, and now how they are today. So it's very timely, and I'm just thinking about this a lot. And kids, and maybe we could talk about like kids and COVID too right now, and keeping them a priority. But let me welcome our guest, Kevin McDowell. Kevin, you're an Olympian. Like, this is a real thing. You're like famous, and it's amazing. And you were in the hot Tokyo Olympics this past summer, and you won a silver medal, right, in the mixed relay, which we want to hear about. And you won 6th place in the men's triathlon. You're a triathlete, so you're going to talk to us all about that. But welcome to the podcast, Kevin. How are you?
Hey, thank you for having me. Yeah, I'm happy to be here. I'm currently in Colorado Springs, so just kind of not too exciting of times, just like getting back into training and more routine now. So it's kind of that time where it's like the hard work is that people don't see before you kind of go out and start to do the races and the flashy stuff, the behind the scenes stuff.
Yeah, which is incredible too, because during winter, a lot of people, like mediocre athletes like me who run but aren't good, we take time off, Kevin, in the winter.
I mean, it's fair. I mean, I'm actually soft, because I was saying this is the first time in almost 10 years that in January I've been in a winter setting. Usually I'm always in Arizona or somewhere else that's really warm.
Yeah.
So I'm actually going to Arizona in February. So I'm counting down the days for that. So I just got to survive this month in Colorado.
But it has to be pretty. Are you getting a lot of snow out there, or there's not a lot of snow yet?
There's not a lot here. Deeper in the mountains, they're starting to get snow, thankfully. I mean, we definitely need it. Selfishly, I have enjoyed the warmer weather that we've had, but this last week, it definitely took a turn for a lot colder, and we've gotten our first bit of snow. So we definitely need it here. So, I mean, yeah.
Well, we're in 7 days here of winter. It started to snow 7 days ago on January 1st, and I'm done with it. Like, we're good. Winter's done for the year.
Right? Yeah. Well, that's the thing with the Midwest, I always feel like too. I mean, I grew up there, but I feel like I'm so soft now, because I used to like run outside all the time in these cold conditions and stuff. But I mean, the thing that's tough there is like once it hits that time, you're kind of stuck until March, because it's just those gloomy, like not much sun, all this stuff. So
I know it's like you're biding your time. It's not great, but and Kevin, you actually grew up. So I am in Wheaton, Illinois, and you grew up in Geneva, which is like 20 minutes away from me. And so, Kevin, I actually heard your story first because there is a boy in my community, and his name is Chase, and he's 12. And you had met him through this organization called Cal's Angels. And if people watch our YouTube, you could see that you're wearing the shirt of Cal's Angels. Yeah. And tell us, just before we get into your own story, like give us a 1-minute plug for Cal's Angels and what they do.
Yeah, so Cal's Angels is a Chicago-based cancer charity, although now they've spread a little bit into Iowa as well and trying to get more regional, and they've grown. But back when they first helped me, which we'll get more into that, they basically help kids battling cancer, granting wishes, supporting them financially, helping the families, and kind of just making things as comfortable for them as they can, and just like helping fight this whole battle with the pediatric side of cancer. Because I think there's so much attention towards like adult cancer, different types of cancer there, but like the pediatric side is actually doesn't get the awareness that it needs to. And I think one crazy thing that I've learned where I actually met Chase in doing this ride, because we were trying to raise awareness for research, is 4%, 4 cents of the dollar actually goes towards children's research cancer. The rest of it goes towards like all other types. So, which is pretty crazy, you'd think. Like that definitely needs to change. So
Yeah. Kevin, do you know the stats on how many children have cancer, like in our nation or globally? Are you familiar with those?
Actually, hold on. I might have a shirt. Let me see.
No. Or we could just, Google it probably really quick. But
yeah.
4 cents on a dollar is very low.
46 kids are diagnosed each day. And this is the crazy part too, is it's the number one death among children. And only 3 new drugs have been discovered in the last 30 years. Yeah.
Wow.
So that's kind of something CALS is now gearing towards too, as well as helping raise more awareness on that end. So as well as like granting wishes and helping and doing hospital parties at Children's Laurie Memorial downtown. And
Laurie's Children's Hospital. Yeah, that's a great one too. Okay, so Kevin, let me ask before we get into your own childhood and kind of how you got into sports. Which is harder, being an Olympian and a triathlete, or dealing with cancer?
I mean, definitely cancer.
Yeah.
But I also think there's different ways you do see it, because there's some definitely parallel ways where there's a lot of unknown in both. Like there's no guarantee you're going to beat cancer. There's no guarantee you're going to be an Olympian as you're going an athlete, and you're going through all these hard trials and errors. And so I think there's a lot that intertwine that can like relate. But I just think like it's a privilege to be able to be in contention, trying to qualify for the Olympics, but it's not a do or die matter situation like cancer. Cancer, you're fighting for your life. It's a do or die situation, and there's a lot more intense, a lot more emotion, and a lot more on that bit where, in the heat of it, sometimes I think in an Olympic buildup, it feels like this is everything and this is all you're after. But in the grand scheme of things, it's really not. And now going through cancer, it's like that's definitely put a perspective on things.
Yeah. Okay. So I want to circle back to that definitely, but tell us a little bit about your growing up, and then how you got so involved with sports and triathlons. Where did that come from? Give us a little backstory.
Yeah, I was a really active kid growing up. My family always put me in all sports growing up. I did swimming, basketball, baseball, soccer, even got into gymnastic stuff, and even just other activity stuff. I ran locally at little local races that the schools would put on. I always loved doing the mile every year that we would do it. It was really competitive with that. And by the time I was 10, one of my best friends on the swim team from the area up in Canute, his family was really into triathlon. So we did this kids triathlon at the Delnor Hospital, which I'm not sure it's Delnor now. But I did my first triathlon there. And after that, I was like, this is made for me. I'm hooked, because I love to ride my bike around the neighborhood. I always loved to run, and I was on a swim team. That was my favorite sport at the time. So I learned about a kid's.
Sorry. I'm just wondering quickly, like, how long is a 10-year-old's triathlon? What are the distances in that?
Probably, so they did like a snake swim across in the Delnor pool. So it must have been 6 laps. So like a 150, maybe 200. And then it was probably, I think it was like a 5 or 6K bike, and maybe like a 1 or 2K run. So super short, like less than a super sprint. So.
Okay. So you have all this energy, you're getting it out in this productive way. Your friend introduced you to the triathlon. Have you primarily specialized in the shorter distances in the triathlon, or like what is your focus? What has it been over the years?
Yeah, I mean, I was fortunate that I joined this kid triathlon team, Multisport Madness kids team, that was like more focused towards Olympics. And that one day had this goal of putting some kids on the Olympic team and that trajectory. So we always had our minds on that, not doing like the half Ironmans or long distance stuff. So for me, it was always whatever age category I was in was the distance I raced in. So when I raced like the 12 and unders, I raced a certain distance. And then from 13 to 15, it was like that super sprint distance. Once you went to 16-year-old, you did the sprint distance. And then once you graduated out of the junior elites, which is 16, 19, you do the Olympic distance. And that's what's in the Olympics today. And then, so I definitely, the furthest race I've ever done is an Olympic distance triathlon.
Okay. And what did that look like in terms of like your family's involvement and like the time that you had to invest in that? Because yeah, you had eventually went to the junior championships, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then how
yeah.
old were you when that happened, when the junior championships happened?
So, well, first there's youth elite, so that's 13 to 15. And then like once you turn 16, that's when the level raises up a bit because you can start to make international and world teams. So that's actually when I was first year in that category at 16, I actually made my first world team, which is kind of uncommon for on the male side because you're going against 19-year-olds. And from there, it's kind of like, oh, wow, okay, this is the next step. And things kind of really started to pick up more, get more serious. It kind of became, it was still super fun to me and I enjoyed it, but I had a bit more of ambitions and goals and kind of things became more realistic with some of the big goals I had in mind. But my family was super supportive, always from the start. They were definitely a type, which I actually really like, is like, were never pushing me. I was always self-driven. I was always, I'm like, oh, I want to go to these practices. At first, they didn't let me go to the 4:30, 5 a.m. practices a couple of times a week or different kind of stuff like that. They were definitely holding me back for a while. And eventually I did have a conversation with them and like, look, like, I really want to do this. Like, can you help support? And so then that's kind of when they're like, okay, no, we're here to support. So they definitely then were a bit more all in, but not in a way that was pushy. I mean, school was always first for them. So if I ever messed up in school, my punishment always was getting practice taken away. So I think that says a lot right there. So if I ever got in trouble or had something, it was a punishment to not get to go to practice. I was always, so I did everything in my power to make sure I could go to practice.
Yeah.
I had the same thing, but for practicing the piano.
Yeah.
Oh, really? Did you love piano that much, Anne?
Yeah. And so I had to focus on my schoolwork first.
Yeah.
Get that out of the way and then practice.
Exactly.
I think it's so great when from such a young age you find something that you're so excited about. And I don't, you don't see that all the time with kids, right? And so I just think do you think, Kevin, is that like personality driven? Was there a role that your friends played, your family played, like environmental, that kind of got you on this one path where you're like, this is it? What do you attribute that to? Like kind of that focused in on something you really love, finding that one love.
I think there's a lot that goes into play. I think it comes down to me as a person and my instincts and who I am. But I also think there's a lot of like the environment that I was surrounded by. And there's a bit of luck and chance because this kids triathlon team was like the first one that had started in like the country. And so I was actually lucky that it was started just down the road from where I was. Like practices were a mile down the street. So I actually got a bike to practice every day where we met. And I think so being fortunate to start so young in an environment like that. And that's something that mentally I was so excited for. And then I had a great group of teammates and friends that became my best friends and still are today. And it just didn't feel like work, but it was fun. And I mean, my parents were very supportive and I grew up in like a neighborhood that was very active. So we were always out in the neighborhood, running around, playing, super competitive. So I just think there's a lot of factors. There's not one element that I can attribute it to, but I actually think there's a lot of like just chance and situation too.
Yeah. Okay. So get us to the time where you discovered that you had cancer. When was that?
Yes.
How'd that happen?
So I was a senior in high school, 18 at the time. I had done my first professional triathlon race because then that was my last year in the junior category. And my goal was to win the junior world title that year because I had been third the previous year. So I was number one returner and had a really good winter of training, but I was carrying a bit of fatigue, but I just didn't really attribute much to it. And did my first race, surprised everyone in my first professional race. And then I actually went home super excited. My mom's a nurse And I was talking with her late one night when I got back, and I was wearing this big baggy t-shirt. And so she noticed this big lump on my neck. And her being a nurse, she didn't like where that lump was, how it looked and stuff. So I didn't know, but she didn't sleep that whole night. So the next day she took me into her office. We did some tests, ended up getting an MRI, and then the results came back the next day. And then that's when I was told it was cancer. So.
And what was that moment like?
It definitely, I was taken back. I didn't know what to think at first. Then you're questioning what type of cancer, am I going to live? What's the survival rate? Everything. Because there's a lot of unknowns at that point. At that point, we knew it was a lymphoma. We probably was a Hodgkin's. We didn't know if it was non-Hodgkin's or Hodgkin's. So we were going to have to go in for a biopsy, do more testing. And I mean, at that point, yeah, my world was spun upside down. It was kind of from being this senior in high school final ride and enjoying the time, and which is supposed to be a highlight, one of the pivotal points in your life where it's like you're finally your high school with your friends, your buddies, and going after some big goals in triathlon and kind of kickstarting the next chapter. And when you're dealt with that, there's just a lot of unknowns. So
was this when Cal's Angels came into the picture, or was that a little bit later?
It was. So shortly after I was diagnosed, someone knew of Cal's Angels and they learned of me. So they reached out, and at that point they were very local, and they were a much smaller charity based kind of in the Tri-City area, primarily a little bit in Chicago. And they only focused on leukemias and lymphomas of that type. So they didn't do all types of pediatric cancer then. So I fell into that category, and it was 18. So it was 18 and under. So they came to me and granted a wish for me. And at first I was like, look, I don't need a wish. It's okay. Help someone else. I'm pretty fortunate with what I've got. And they're like, no, we want to give you something. And so I actually got an iPad from them. And little did I know how big of a role that would play, because as I was going through, it went to all my chemo treatments. I played it and used it so much in bed. It was kind of like my little lifeline and communication, and watching shows on it and help pass the time when I was really sick through those 6 months.
Wow. And so are you still involved with Cal's Angels these days?
I am, yes. So I've been trying to be more active as I've gotten going. And these last year, I feel like I'm really in a position now to really want to help more and become more of an ambassador for them. And I've always raced with them on my suit, and I've got these bracelets that they've given me that I've always race in. I never take them off. They don't come off unless they fall off and they're gone. So every so often one will rip or do something or come off. But I mean, I raced with these in the Olympics. I didn't even take it off for that.
Awesome.
So I raced, and I just try to spread awareness. So this last year, actually, I went on a charity ride with them, and so they started in South Dakota at the Mount Rushmore and biked all the way to Chicago. So I went and did the first 2 days of the ride, and then I met up with them the last 2 or 3 days of the ride and rode in with them and stuff. So I'm working to get more involved with them and the board and helping in any way. And I've attended a couple hospital parties that they throw, which are really fun for the kids on the pediatric floor, and provide gifts. And I really hope to just keep bringing more awareness and supporting them in any way I can. And I'm excited we have a fundraiser every year at the gala, the Got Hope Gala, and I'll be there this February, and I'll actually be a speaker for them this year. So I'm excited to go there and help raise a lot of money. I mean, they've raised huge amounts of money at these fundraisers before. So
Kevin, can you just give us a quick tutorial of Hodgkin's versus non-Hodgkin's lymphoma and the difference?
Yeah. So the best way to put it, I guess, is Hodgkin's is a very straightforward. It's one type. If you have non-Hodgkin's, it's different. There's many hundreds and hundreds of different types and forms it can be a lot more complex. And so when I was diagnosed with Hodgkin's, we had a little celebration. It actually sounds crazy, but we were like, okay, this is great in a way, because we know it's pretty straightforward. They have a process. There's no guarantees. A lot can happen, but it's pretty straightforward. 6 months of chemo, 12 rounds, every other Monday for 6 months, going in for chemo, which gets intense by the end, but it's you're going to beat this and get through it. And I was fortunate that we caught it where I was stage 2A. So I wasn't because my mom had seen it at that point. So I was lucky in that way, I guess. when you can say lucky.
Yeah, I'm really glad your mom's a nurse.
Yeah, I would have definitely gone a lot further. And I mean, especially because it was wintertime too. So it was by chance that I was wearing this big baggy t-shirt that night and talking with her because it's not normal. So we were really lucky we caught it when we did before I started to have like major symptoms. Because I mean, there was one going against my windpipe, the trachea, and then a couple in my chest. And I did have chest pain and was remembering something in my throat hurting, which the doctor's like, yeah, that makes sense because it was pressing pretty hard. But I didn't read much of it. I'm an athlete. And I'm like, I'm just pushing myself. It's just part of the sport.
Wow. And so have you recovered or?
Yeah.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah. So I celebrated 10 years cancer-free this past March. So that was a big hurdle, big milestone to hit.
Yeah. I'm really, really glad for you, obviously.
Yeah.
I have a little story and then I have a question. So,
Yeah.
I mean, maybe I have my question first. I was just wondering if I think you mentioned just how your cancer has given you perspective as you run, because when you compete, usually at the Olympics, it's like all out and you're giving all you have. But then, being a cancer survivor, it gives you perspective that there's more, maybe. Is that what you're saying to life than that? And then I wanted to know, the question is like, how has that impacted the way that you compete?
Yeah. I mean, I think there's ups and downs. Like I definitely had some dark points even after cancer and I beat it. Cause I kind of at first was like, okay, cancer is a challenge. I'll beat it, done, bang, zoom, you're over. But it kind of stays with you in ways. Cause like, I mean, I was 18 at the time. So it definitely affected me, my growth and all that stuff. And I didn't factor in how hard the chemo was actually in my body. And I kind of then went through a bit of survivor's guilt in a way where I was like, look, like I made it through so easy per se, like compared to others who didn't get through, or like I never had to go to the hospital and all this. And I discredited a lot of like what I actually went through. And it took me years for mom and parent and other people and doctors to be like, look, like you still went through extreme chemotherapy. Your body was stripped. Like it doesn't mean because you went through okay and you've now beat cancer that you're that it wasn't a hard battle in your sense. And so that took a lot of time to come through. And I think there's sometimes where I just wanted to separate from it and not even think about it and just push it behind me. But I think these past few years have really allowed me to understand and get a full grasp of what I've been through, except I'm different in different ways, and try to appreciate more the moments and the goods that I have, because you don't know when the next one's going to come. And just like, I think this last year too, I raced with a lot of like that little kid, Kevin, that I've always wanted to, and like the dreams that I had. And I think that's why I had such a good race at the Olympics. And like, I got so many letters from loved ones back home and friends and people and notes. And a lot of it was just attributing to just like that spark that I've had. And when I was young, and I've always dreamed of being there and enjoy this moment. And I'm like, I need to just enjoy this and race like that kid and have no fear and just like not overthink things. And I think that's ultimately what led to what I had there, because I just didn't overthink things like you easily can there, and I may have, and like I have in the past. So
Kevin, there's this like I almost feel like you're talking about like just the idea of living life to the fullest too. I mean, you went through this at 18, which is that is a super formative age. Like you're right, it's like that's the age you're dreaming, you have all your dreams, and it's all right ahead of you there. And it's so interesting how you're talking about like the survivor's guilt, but then going back to like kind of this earlier version of yourself, right? Where it's like you didn't yet know of this big stuff, like these big problems, these big issues and all this. But I'm kind of stuck like thinking about like the 18, like that formative 18. Nobody should have cancer when they're 18. It's just not, it's just no. And so I'm wondering if you can, and there's a lot of people now who do, this. I mean, volunteering with Cal's Angels, you see kids going through all this kind of stuff. What can you talk to the kids who are in kind of these formative years, 16, 17, 18, who are facing, whether it's cancer or whether it's a bigger trauma? What advice could you give to them? What could you say to help them like keep going, don't lose hope? like what, from your experience, what can you offer to these kids?
Yeah, I think there's two parts to that. I think the first one, which is something that I lived going through my battle, which actually helped me a lot, is like I tried to put perspective on what can I do and not what can't I do. So it was like, okay, like I was sick for a week, but then there was always a week where my down week from when I didn't receive treatment that I felt better. So I tried to really get out and do something, be active or hang out with some friends, what I was allowed to do within my restrictions of my doctor. And I think that helped get me through it because I just kept living moment to moment by the what can I do situation versus not thinking that, oh, I lost my triathlon season. I'm not going to be able to go and try and get the world title. I'm not going to be able to go to some of these like graduation parties. I'm not going to be able to do this like final senior stuff. But what like situations on changing, like I still was able to go to prom because of the way it fell in. I was able, like my birthday luckily was not on a chemo week. So I actually had a really nice birthday with a lot of my friends and went to a lot of practices and started helping the younger kids on the team. So I changed that perspective a little bit, which I think helped just like lighten the blow of like what I was actually going through. And I think the second part that's taken me these last few years to learn is don't set a timeline on everything. And when you're going through it, and maybe even when you return after you've completed beat your battle with either cancer or some illness or had some trauma, it's like, for me, I thought I'd be back racing competitively better than I ever was a year later after my treatment. But doctors are like, it's going to take you years on years to get back. And then I was like, I think I'll be back in a year. And I pushed too hard, too quick to return. And I think had I had more perspective that like it does take time, and there's no right time either. I mean, it took me about 8 years after I beat cancer to get back to where I was fully better than I was maybe pre-cancer. Now I'm talking physically, not only just physically, but physically, mentally, emotionally, stability, just all realms of life, as when I felt like my balances were in check. And it took many, many years. And I struggled with that too. Well, I should be back better because of what I've gone through and now on the better end. So why am I not in this situation? So don't like try to push to get back right to where you were, but let things come a bit and accept what you've gone through in some ways.
Yeah, I think there's a balance in there, right? Like there's shoulds are like the worst, right? When we compare ourselves to other people or what we're told to do. And then there's also like what I'm hearing a little bit in your story is that you also, though, you kept pushing yourself. And I think sometimes when people have trauma, if we're not proactive about it, it can define us, right? And so what you did is you kept moving forward to, even in what you've been through. So there's that balance in there somewhere, right? Of realistic, right? Is it like realistic goals or what?
I think realistic goals is what would be perfect. So for me, I was like, I put it back as like cancer, bye, done, things in my back burner. I'm a survivor, awesome. Like now I'm normal, but you're not normal after what you've gone through, and it's okay to like take the time to return. And I think something big for me is like, I mean, I had to talk to a psychologist and for a while, and that was hard. And I mean, I'm still scarred in some ways with the person I talked with, but she's helped me that I know, because like we picked through a lot of stuff, like challenge. She made me open up, and I started to express things that like maybe I hadn't expressed. I think one thing that I've really learned, especially these last few years, is to be more open and to be more like vocalize stuff. Maybe whoever you're close with, your family or this, because I used to be this tight, like hold everything in and never say anything bad or until I flew, and then it was just like things were all a mess and everything was disaster. Just hold it in, hold it in, hold it in. And then just like when something would come out, it'd be just like a bomb. But now it's like, oh, I just vocalize stuff and frustration or vent things here and there. And nothing then ever really magnitudes into this massive moment where it's like, then it can really become crippling and affect your whole life. It's like these little like things. So I think communication is something that I've learned a lot more over these last few years too.
I'm really glad to hear that, as well as like, I think what you're addressing is the holistic aspect of cancer, and like not ignoring the emotional impact as well, and psychological, because like I hear frustration, like I could imagine you being super frustrated because you're like, this is where I was at, let's go. I could imagine and setting that unrealistic expectation because you want to just move past faster than your body's saying, and I'm going to say like the only way I can relate to that is like my dad passed away when I was 20. And so I was in grief for a long time and I wanted to be done with the grief, but it took at least a year.
Yeah.
But I can't rush that. And I wonder if like for cancer patients or people, if each case is just so unique to you, right? And it's like you're just dealing with your own special set of circumstances, and then it'll take you that much time to process. So my question is like, how do you manage that, the grief, maybe frustration, and then maybe unrealistic expectations, like, and how do you, I would say, extend grace to yourself? How do you help yourself move forward?
I think I've surrounded a really good team around me, with just starting with like my family mostly, and then the friends that have been with me from the beginning and know me. And I just created this tight knit circle where it's like I feel really comfortable and open with them, and they're open with me. And I think it's just keep a constant communication and just like vocalizing goals and other things or concerns or just talking. And I think that has creating that circle is what has enabled me to really grow and get through a lot of things that maybe I still wouldn't be through had I not. Because there's still doubts and different things that I go through, but it's like there's those people in your back corner, and they're the ones that sometimes get this outside view, this 30,000 like helicopter view over you that you may not get. Because when you're in the moment, you may only think this one thing, and it's like this, and everything's terrible. But it's like actually, if you take this, pull out, remove yourself from the situation and look big picture, you're like, it's not that bad, or it's okay, or this makes sense, or no, it's okay to be feeling like that. So I think just creating that, like surrounding yourself with those people.
You know, Kevin, one of my, I don't know, Anna, I don't know if I told you this, one of my key words for the year is together. Just because of COVID, people were very separated. And I think what we're going through as a nation and in our communities, our local communities, and, personal, like there's, we have a big issues of loneliness and anxiety and all these things. And so I think what you're talking about of community is actually really critical, like at this stage and any stage, right? Like having people, close people you can trust, people who know you, who, you're not afraid to say what, to cry, to weep, to laugh, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
That's really important. The other thing that I was thinking about as you were talking is, that some people do have this tendency to like run away when they have pain, like something bad happens and you're like, just rear view mirror, bye. But the most amazing people, Kevin, are like that I've met are the people who have taken their pain and transformed it. Okay, so this is like a little bit what you're doing with your Cal's Angels. If you were to say, I had cancer, it's in my rear view window, you wouldn't invest time in helping other kids that's not in their rear view mirror right now. And I think, when we have pain, the best thing sometimes we could do is say, is there a purpose for this pain? Have you ever asked yourself that question, or has that ever gone through your mind in your own journey?
Like, is there a purpose why I went through what I did? Or I always say everything happens for a reason. So whether you like it or not, or whether you like that reason or not, but I do in some ways believe like there's two ways you can take it. Like I could have gone through cancer and be like, okay, I'm done with this, don't want to deal with it. Like that was my personal story. Or I can just start to share it and provide hope and hopefully make a difference in other people's lives, and show like what you can do after coming through it, but also saying like it takes time and whatever it is you want to do. And I think that's something I find a lot of joy in it. Like, so for example, after the Olympics, I visited a lot of people, like showed the medal, like hung out with people. Couple of the most like highlight moments for me. I mean, and I had like a couple like big events that I went to, and a lot of crowds and people, but it was actually going to at this Cal's Angels ride, the War on Wheels, and we were at this hospital in Iowa, and this girl who's been battling cancer, she walked, she got to come out and send us off on her way, and it was her first time being outside in like months. And to see how she lit up when we talked with her, and her to hold that medal, I mean, that was everything to me. I was like, that was one of the coolest moments ever. And then just to also go, when we finished that ride and rode into town, and when I met Chase, and then I met another girl, Megan, and she had a type of cancer, which is actually now, she's in a wheelchair at the moment. So she's actually doesn't know if she'll be able to return to run or walk again. She's already relearned once, then relapsed and had that. And so she's kind of like, look, like she has a goals of maybe going to the Paralympics for wheelchair racing. And I'm like, that is so cool that it's like this situation that they're spinning their mind to. And I'm trying to hope like I can open up some perspective that you can do this and change the ways you view of it. And those are what are the most like impactful, touching moments, where every time I do stuff like that, I'm like, I want more of that. I want to help where I can. So I think that's where it's like, when I really retire from the sport, that's where a lot of my energy is going to go towards.
That's awesome. You mentioned you made a comment of War on Wheels. Do you want to explain that more?
Yeah, so they've gotten it called War on Wheels. It's an acronym of wishes, awareness, and research. And that's three of the big things that Cal's Angels is done for. So granting wishes to kids battling cancer, raising awareness, and then raising fundraising for research. Because as I said earlier, it's like only 4 cents to the dollar of research actually goes towards pediatric side. So that's something we're really trying to just like move forward and progress. And so they started this ride 2 years ago now, I think. So this is the 3rd year that they've done it, where they ride from one spot to another. One year it was from California all the way to Chicago. They did that. And then last year, because the COVID times is tough, so they did it in one day. They rode from Iowa City to Chicago in one day. So a 24-hour ride, which is pretty crazy. And then this last year, it was Mount Rushmore to Chicago. And that's the one that I actually attended. And so basically we're riding through towns and like riding on our bikes and raising awareness, fundraising, and getting as much support that we can. And it's a pretty incredible event for everything that we've gone. And it's really, I think, turned some heads throughout it. And we met some pretty special people, and people would turn up or turn heads at the restaurants, be like, what's going on with this group? What's this? And asking questions. And a couple of then people would come out to send us on our ways before we went and rode. And even some who were battling cancer at that time. So it was cool.
That's amazing. That sounds like such a fun. How long did that take you to get from Mount Rushmore to here?
They did it in 2 weeks.
In 2 weeks. So you'd spend the night at what, like hotels or?
A hotel, yeah, hotels or somewhere. So they had it mapped out, and they were just like, yeah, go away. We had an RV following as well. So it was really cool. And rides would range from 60 miles to 110 miles a day.
Yeah, you're like a movable group of hope, right? It's like, here comes Hope. Hope's riding into town. Uh-oh, Hope just left. We got to go with him, right? It's just like okay. So Kevin, we only have a couple more minutes, but I do want to talk about the Olympics, because I think, yes, you are the first Olympian we've had on the podcast. And so you have to tell us what it was like to be at the Olympics, and kind of the moment of when you're done, like what's that moment like, and the celebration moment. Give us like just a little insight into what it was like to be there and to realize your dream in this way.
I mean, it was surreal. So like, even though it was COVID times and my family or friends or no one was able to make the trip, so it was really like quiet games in that standpoint. When you were on the games and it was like, it didn't feel like it didn't feel like a compromised games. I still felt like it was a true Olympic Games, and being in the village and you're with like thousands of other athletes in there, the best of their sports, and you're staying in a building with all the USA athletes, and you're seeing all these big names. And you're like, for example, I was like going up the elevator And then I walk in the first day as we arrive, and it's like Caleb Dressel and some other swimmers. And we're like, oh, wow, that's one of the big names. I'm like, this is the Olympics. And you're like Katie Ledecky and other people, big track stars. And you're like, oh, this is like nothing else that I've ever experienced. It's kind of funny because like you have all these different country uniforms and outfits that you wear because you get massive amount of clothing for the game. So it's kind of it looks like a little bit of a circus, like some of the clothing that people are wearing for their different countries and representing the passion. I mean, yeah, it's definitely a bigger stage than anything I've been on, but at the same time, it just felt like we had a really good team with the triathlon team we were on, and it was a tight knit group. And I think partway because there was no fans or family or friends that could be there, like we just had each other. So we really relied on each other. And so we all had our meals together and hung out, and made a lot of different cool friends. And yeah, it was definitely a highlight that's going to be hard to beat. Hopefully it can beat in 2024. Like, but it surpassed all my expectations that I had going in, and I was going in very open-minded and just racing like while that, yeah, there were no fans or anyone, like no family or friends could be there at the race or after the race. Like it was still so special to be out there and realizing I could feel all the support back home. I would get all these videos and pictures and stuff, and all like the host parties that I saw going on to viewing parties for the races were pretty remarkable. So I just could channel all that energy in that way. So it was pretty special.
Are you one of those people who, so you have your medal and then it's the next morning and you're like, is there kind of like a letdown for you that, oh, like it's over? Or is there like, okay, let's just keep going to the next, like, where's your mind at? Where was your mind at like the day after?
I was on a different planet. I feel like I was on such a high. Like, I mean, I had like one of my best individual races and had got sixth. And then we had a really great team relay and ended up with a medal. I mean, it's like, what more can you ask for? And then it was my birthday the next day. So I was at the Olympics on my birthday. Like, I'm like, how much better can this get right now? I mean, sure, we could have won gold. Sure, I could have gotten a medal there. But it's like, in perspective, I'm like, this couldn't have gone much better than I could have hoped coming in from what my expectation and goals were personally. And I was just literally having like the time of my life at that time. So yeah, like as I left, it was sad, but I was also like ready to go by that point. We've been in there for 2 weeks and things are it kind of feels like honestly, it was a nice escape from like the real world too. Like it was a crazy sensation where you're like, I'm in this little like bubble where it's like no other thing exists. You're in this Olympic thing, and it's like, yeah, the world's eyes are on this event, but it's like you're in this event, which was crazy because actually I didn't get to watch many races. Like normally, when the Olympics are going on at home, every night you're on the TV ongoing, but it's like when you're in it, you actually don't sometimes see as much going on. There's stuff in the TV going on, and we got more going as we went, but it's like you're kind of focusing on your events as well and the timings of it and everything too. So
okay, so in February you have this Cal's Angels event, right? That's coming up that you're going to be part of. And then what else is on your radar for the coming months, either in terms of like just your own personal work, or what are you training for? What's going on for you this spring as you look ahead?
Yeah, I hopefully I'll have a race in March, and then the race season will really truly kickstart in May. And I'm hoping to still race on the World Triathlon Series, which is like what the Olympics level racing is. So it's a distance like super sprint, and the Olympic distance. So I'll be focusing primarily on that because I still have my eyes wanting to go for Paris in 2024. Nice, so that's kind of where now I've sat down with my coach. We've looked big picture, short picture, like closer term too, and how am I going to like be in my best position come 2024 now. So chipping away at some different goals and also just enjoying some of the moments with things that I have. So
yeah, good.
Yeah.
Good. Well, Kevin, this was really fun to get to talk to you a little bit. Super inspiring. Your story is amazing. I love how you are using what you've gone through and now blessing and encouraging kids. And, you guys probably heard a bunch of great organizations that we talked about. Go visit Cal's Angels, head on over to the website. We'll include links to a few of these too, I think. Laurie's Children's Hospital, St. Jude. Oh, and I was thinking too about Ronald McDonald House Charities, as you were talking about some of the things too, Kevin.
Yeah, my mom actually volunteers there. Yeah.
Does she?
So,
yeah.
She does in Colorado Springs. She's like a huge
Great.
volunteer there. So
yeah, so many ways to help these amazing kids who are dealing with cancer and who have so much ahead of them and so much to offer our world, and just heroes, like by any stretch of the imagination. And so Kevin, we're grateful for you and for your time, and we're excited to see what the spring and the summer hold for you, and just keep sharing that medal with the kids, right? Like,
yeah,
look at that, right? Inspiring. Thanks, Kevin, and thank you guys for listening.
Thank you.
We hope this was really encouraging for you all, and like us, share this podcast with those that you think would be encouraged by it, and we will see you guys next time.